We mentioned in the last part that we have this kind of flickering of information from our Vuex store. Now, the reason that this happens is because the first thing that happens over in our editor or in our main.js app is our Vue store is created. This is happening at the same time, so we don't see a huge delay. We're not waiting for this request to our me endpoint to finish before we render our app, but our app is rendered, shows us in the current state of being unauthenticated, but as soon as the information in the Vuex store is available, it will then update itself. So that's why we see that small flicker. Now what we can do is we can actually only render our app once this has been successfully finished. So we can actually wait for the API request to our me endpoint to finish before we render our app. To do that, it's as easy as adding a then from this promise and then only rendering our app once that request is finished. That's a really, really small change. This is perfectly acceptable to do. We make our request to our API over in attempt. If we are not authenticated, that's fine. We just commit set token and set user to null. But otherwise, we wait for this request to finish. We set the user. And what that means is the store, our Vuex store, is hydrated before we render our application. So let's check out the difference over here now when we refresh. Of course, we get some white space here, just an empty page beforehand. But what that means is that as long as your API is fast enough, your users will just notice that you have a normal application and just sending a request and waiting for this information to come back. So we now don't see that flicker. We wait for that to send the request across before we render our app out. Now, if we sign ourselves out by just deleting that token and refresh, this still works in the same way. We're just not doing anything. The Vue store is still not doing anything because we don't have that token available. So your application is just loading and working as normal. So we can sign in now. That's immediately switched over from our store. But then when we refresh, we're just resending a request through, getting that information back. But the main difference is we're only rendering our Vue app once the store has its initial data in there ready to go. So that's this really, really simple way to prevent flickering.